Before we move to the discussion period, let me note that the set of topics that we have heard in this block are not necessarily comprehensive. We did not really have sufficient time to discuss many related topics that academia and industry is currently working on. So let me look at the questions, and I see there is one for you, Professor Bruno, and this is about if we convert low productivity areas to the farms to conservation planting, do you expect any issues in using large-scale machineries within the field?
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for the question. This is obviously a very valid concern. The analysis that we did, it was specifically on aggregating area rather than imagining a zigzag across the field. So all the data that I've shown are all contiguous, so 1 acre of contiguous land. And that's because it's basically the basis of being able to make anything feasible or anything that a farmer would be interested in doing. And even though I typed the question earlier, but it's related to this, farmers are resonating with this approach of precision conservation and be able to use alternative land use and mostly native plants, because it brings this perspective of, first of all, greater profitability because they stop losing $200 an acre or so, but also the incentives in relation to carbon credits. If you have an area that can sequester carbon, retain it, non-emit through nitrogen fertilizer, it's a win-win situation. It's just coming, and there is a grant that I have where farmers are converting these low productivity areas in exchange of incentives that we are providing within the grant through NRCS. So it could be basically the beginning of something of a potential policy dealing with this conversion within field CRP kind of approach.
Yeah, there was also a related question, and especially in looking at the needs in developing countries, when you are looking at small and scattered farm scales and so on, how do some of these ideas translate into those applications?
Well, there is a little bit different. What I've shown here is the possibility of translating the science and scaling it. They have obviously a completely different sorts of problem. They don't have an excessive amount of fertilizer. The problem is the opposite. How you start bringing, better seeds, better agronomic practices. And so the way I'm collaborating with them, I led an initiative within the FAO on forecasting production. And so how farmers get involved in basically get some alternative management in response to a forecasting system that tells them what if scenarios. So the modeling is becoming much more reliable, and we're trying to capture this low input system. So before you can go with drone or any other sorts of things, it's very important to see what is the reduce the risk on making a decision such that you have better chances of succeeding. And it's still a regenerative approach of basically integrating, cover crops, legumes, rotations, and the developing world is a completely different issues, and technology from here needs to be tested through these approaches before it can be provided in terms of immediate solution.
Thank you, Bruno. And Eric, I had a question about some of the multidisciplinary needs that are there for large-scale commercialization of cell-cultured meats. I was wondering if you had any comments related to that.
Sure. Well, our goal is to produce a very mundane product in an extraordinary way. That's the goal. To make chicken taste like chicken is no small task. To make something as ordinary as chicken taste like chicken. And it requires, as you can imagine right now, there's no single discipline for cultivated meat production. That will soon change. There are centers for excellence being established as this field matures, and it will become its own discipline. But for now, it means hiring extremely interdisciplinary in order to solve these problems and challenges of scale production. So I'll say this, if there are any students listening right now, any postdocs, any doctoral students, anyone in school right now considering, we need you. The planet needs you. And I don't say that with any form of exaggeration. I think everyone here would agree. We need every innovative solution to be tried and validated and vetted, and ultimately vetted with consumers. If consumers want to buy these products, and we think they will, then this will be a watershed moment for new innovations for other food productions that we've historically only thought of as being produced in one particular way. In this case, growing animals to eat their flesh. So for us, this will be interdisciplinary for the near future, but we are always looking for those that are listening right now to build the actual disciplines at universities around the globe in order to help realize our goal of producing this as a dedicated discipline in both science and engineering.
Yeah, good. Norm Scott had a question about, for cultivated meat, how do you see the competition, in quotes, with plant-based products and the issues limiting acceptance?
Let me use a food pun, apples and oranges. Upside Foods, formerly Memphis Meats, was the very first cultivated meat company in 2015. This is an old idea, but we were the first company to ever commercialize it. Since our founding in 2015, there's almost 100 companies in the cultivated meat space globally now. It is an incredible space race for food, if you will. In response, and so we see our competition is with them, as well as conventional meat producers. Plant-based, and again, no knock to plant-based products, I consume them routinely, but that is a very different world. It is its own industry with its own set of goals. And so we see ourselves as competing with the 9 out of 10 people on this planet that eat meat every day.
Thank you very much, Eric. And I have a question for Luis. I know you mentioned about the United Nations Summit coming up in a couple of weeks. I was wondering about some of the circularity examples and so on, some you mentioned. In the Netherlands, is there some experience now that's coming out from perhaps some of these applications that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there is of course a lot to be said about this, and I wanted to provoke, but of course I'm not against circularity per se, so don't get me wrong, all of you. But there are always losses and trade-offs in circularity. For example, as you will remember, the famous mad cow disease or Creutzfeldt-Jakob variant, we have of course stopped for a long time, and we still cannot do that, using animal slaughter leftovers as animal feed. The law is now being changed so that this can be done and can be used as an ingredient in chicken feed, for example, and in fish feed. So that is an example where new legislation can help, actually a very obvious way of closing some of the loop. The other one is that we've been experimenting with retrieval from sewage of certain types, for example, phosphates and other minerals that could be useful. This is still too expensive to be used on a say normal basis, but I think it's very good to go for these experiments and to see how they can work. But in all these cases, you also lose a lot of energy. That is what we need to think about. And then to give you another trade-off from Africa, which is an important and dangerous one. If you want to use biomass as animal feed, that of course has immediate implications for soil organic matter. When you then even want to use it for completely different purposes, so away from the farm, because at least the animal manure stays on the farm, then you really extract from the system at that lower farm level nearly all of your biological materials, and that is an enormous cost. So that's why we always need to have this this scaling principle and look at the level above and below.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Again, sorry that we are kind of running out of time. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers and also those who posed the questions for the discussion. So thank you very much. Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and thank you all of the speakers. It was excellent. I'm sitting here trying to take notes, but almost no time to really capture the richness of all of it. So starting with the example, and then Luis's provocation and the cellular meat. I mean, it's all just fantastic. So thank you very much. And we'll convene again after a short break.